Hi, my name is Stephen Guilbeault, and I'm with Equiterre in Canada. On the one hand, we're living very thrilling times in terms of what's happening with the green economy. For the first time ever in history, in 2008, more money was spent worldwide in the construction of a green electricity infrastructure as opposed to a fossil fuel-based electricity infrastructure. Reports after reports, one by HSBC Bank in 2009, another one more recently by the Deutsche Bank, show that there are huge, and we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars being spent right now in the green economy, clean technologies, renewable energy, energy efficiency, clean transportation. Unfortunately, the United Nations process has had a challenging time trying to incorporate those opportunities within the negotiations. But we've seen champions around the world, and interestingly enough, not the champions you would think. Right now, the countries that are investing the most per capita are not the European Union, Japan, or even the US, but they're China or South Korea. South Korea will be investing 80% of its stimulus package in the green economy. China, 36% of its stimulus package in the green economy, which is 4 times more than a country like Canada, which is unfortunately one of the laggards internationally. The US is on average with other OECD countries, but we're seeing even some developing countries and economies in transition saying, well, we're ready to do this. People now in the clean energy sector are talking about China as the Walmart of clean tech because they're investing massively more in overall terms than anybody else around the world to produce these technologies and to be able to export them massively throughout the world. People have to understand that the financing piece of the negotiation is a very important part. Why? Because both in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, during the negotiations on the Rio Climate Convention, and in 1997 in Kyoto, developed countries made commitments to developing countries. We took a pledge to help these countries do 2 things. One, help them develop their economy without reproducing our model of development, which has put up in the mess we are right now in terms of global warming and climate change. And on the other hand, we also commit that we would help them adapt to climate change. Unfortunately, very few industrialized countries have lived up to their promises and have made their pledge to the extent that they were supposed to. Now, in the lead up to Copenhagen and during the meeting in Copenhagen, a number of commitments were made by industrialized governments in terms of fast financing. So we're talking about something in the order of $30 billion in the coming years to help developing countries do these 2 things. Unfortunately, since then, and one thing that is key, obviously, there is one question where this money will be coming from. Some of it will be public, some of it will be from the private sector, some of it will probably come from international mechanisms that will need to be put in place, like levy on bunker fuels and aviation, levy on international transaction regarding the carbon markets. But for all these things to start to happen, the key to it is public sector money. Governments have to show that they're serious about it. They have to, some of them, like the European Union, have made some commitments. Unfortunately, the money's not on the table, and the money needs to be on the table. Why? Because, we promised we were going to do this. And a number, beyond the European Union, a number of governments have been very vague or simply, when they haven't been vague, they haven't committed to the level that they should in terms of ensuring that developing countries have access to money to start doing a number of the things that need to be done in order to fight global warming on the one hand and to tackle the challenge of adapting to climate change on the other. We need to let our governments know in Europe, in Japan, in Canada, in the US, Australia, and New Zealand that the negotiations won't be able to go very far unless those governments that made promises, that made pledges to help developing countries do their fair share. We have a moral obligation, which we recognized in 1992 and 1997. We made a series of promises that we were going to do this, and frankly, it's in our own best interest. If we don't help these countries, then they will continue to emit more and more greenhouse gas. It's not good for China, it's not good for Africa, certainly not good for Europe, North America, or Japan. So on a whole number of fronts. It's good for the environment. Obviously, it's good for the economy because we will stimulate this green economy that has to be the dominant force of the 21st century in terms of economic development, in terms of energy development, and it will obviously be good to fight climate change. Obviously, short-term financing is a very, very important piece of the negotiations, but it cannot be a one-shot deal. It has to be sustained over a long period of time, just like what the Americans did with the space program, or with home computers in Japan and other countries. I mean, the development of these economic sectors were done because government invested over a long period of time massive amounts of energies, so that today it's possible for people all around the world to have access to mobile phone technologies or to home computers. Well, it's the same thing with the clean economy, with green infrastructure, and making those new tools and this new economy available to the developing world is a key to the negotiations. I mean, it's the key that unlock all the other keys. Without that, unfortunately, it won't be able to move the negotiations forward. It won't be able to come up with a fair, ambitious, and binding deal that we know we need to have in the shorter term, as short as possible in the coming future. And if we can do that, then everything is possible. If we don't, unfortunately, we're likely doomed to fail. Well, there's a number of things that are going to happen around issues like forestry and logging. There's some pretty bad rules that were going to be adopted. They were off the table. They might be back on the table now. Some issues around financing, around the infrastructure of these finance mechanisms. I mean, it's not, as I said earlier, it's not just the money, but it's where will the money be coming from? Will it be sustained? Will it be predictable? We can't be wishy-washy about this. We have to be, as a industrialized country, as a group, have to be very clear and committed to that. So these are two things we will be following closely in the next 24 hours.